Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone across the world. This is Radio Works World, and I am Rima Aleksandraviciute with Marina Nani. Today, I would like to talk to you about contribution versus responsibility. Responsibility, especially in children. On many occasions, I have noticed that very often children expect adults carers, would we be carers or parents to do things for them? I'm sure that's not you. I'm sure you have observed similar situations, or you know someone close to you who are often in these situations. So my question to you would be, who is expected to teach responsibility? And is responsibility as responsibility from child's point of view? Very often, I can see young people, children, being very eager to help adults. They are engaging in quite challenging tasks, and they are beaming with a sense of achievement, with a sense of contribution. So how are we presenting that? I strongly believe that if we pick up early, if we allow children to contribute, to engage in simple tasks, would that be dishwashing, would that be taking rubbish out, or just to fold laundry? When we allow that early, later on in their lives, that will be joy rather than chore. And as adults, we would hear more, yes, please, rather than, oh, not again. So who is to teach that? What do you think, Marina?
Well, I love this question because as a single parent, when my children were really young, I was a bit, how should I put this, in two minds about responsibility. I was thinking maybe they are too young to give them too much responsibility, and where do you stop? I mean, what is the right balance to engage your children within the running of the household, or maybe creating something together, a little project, decorating the Christmas tree, that sort of, but then that's only seasonal. So I was thinking of more on a daily basis. So what I've done, actually I didn't, they inspired me. So they're very young. And one of my sons said, I would love to have a dog. So even at the time, for me, it was impossible to take more responsibility. I decided to trust my children to take responsibility for their sweet friend, because I think friendship could be a responsibility, like a sweet responsibility. I don't or an opportunity. So I decided to go along and just see what happens next. So of course, it was a great solution for them to become aware that a dog needs to be walked, needs to be fed, needs to be played with, spend quality time with. So they grew into very responsible adults, not because of me lecturing them about responsibility, but because they had their hands full, and they loved it. It wasn't something like a chore. It wasn't something they could escape even. Of course, they never thought of that, because their whole life starts revolving in a different way, in a very, how shall I put this, in a very natural way. So they become naturally responsible because they love their pet, their dog, and then they had another one because they thought, oh, he must feel very lonely being by himself. So we end up having two dogs all the time. And I think it's a great question, because parents are very loving people, because when you give birth, the instinct of being a parent is born as well, so you become a different person. And it's very hard to see what's best for your child, because you are so close and you love them so much, you could, almost like taking their oxygen away. So it's, your desire to give them more, to love them more, it's almost unbearable. So you have to have a structure in place. You have to have a clear image of from where to where you impact their life, and what would be what could be something to enrich their life without you being part of it necessarily. So I'm giving this example with the pet because when you first asked the question, I thought, this is amazing question, because at the time, if I had you to teach me what to do, would have been amazing. But I was by myself, so I'm sure that your question would relate to millions and millions of people around the world who are facing that type of challenge. For example, I don't know if you are aware, but at the Radio Works World, we have an episode, weekly episode, now it's twice a week, about me time, and is run by my very dear friend Adrienne Marks. And she talks a lot about me time as struggles, physical struggles, financial struggles. So you really need, as a parent, to have a little bit of time to yourself to figure out what you want, where you go next, because life is this evolving place where everything is changing all the time. So for you to be ready for what's happening next and eventually create what you want to happen next, you really need me time. And what's happening with the children during your me time? You can't leave them by their own devices all the time. So you can't pay somebody. They can't be in school all the time. It's a priceless relationship that you don't necessarily want to go the wrong direction. So far from wanting to ignore your children, sometimes you are in a very, as a parent, and I know this from my own experience, you feel guilty that you are not giving enough time to your children.
Yes, thank you very much, Marina. I do completely agree with you. And at the same time, there is a reason why, especially before we take off in every single aircraft, we are always reminded, please attend to your own oxygen mask, and only after you have your own, help people around you. And that leads me to the next, next point. When we teach responsibility, children as well as parents naturally pick up what each of them can do. And your example with your children, when you trusted them a pet, is a perfect example. Sometimes it takes a big leap of faith to entrust your children, and at the same time, small step by step, parents get to know their children better, as well as children get to know their parents better. And I have a perfect example in many cases is my brother and his family. They have adorable young lady who's 6 years old now, and I will use their family often because there were moments when naturally the young lady, my niece, would ask for attention. And my brother and his wife used to use a timer. Once children know how to engage themselves from early age, they know that that time will pass and she will get all the attention of mom's or dad's attention. So once again, it's a lesson to parents as well as children, because a number of occasions, because I'm not there all the time with her, she would demand my attention when I was on the call with someone. And once explained that once the call is over, I will be with you, it works well. Yes, it takes patience. Yes, it takes trust. And at times, it takes to suppress the feeling of guilt or suppress the feeling of fear by trusting your young children, yes, and at the same time, starting with small, at the time 5 minutes, and the time it will grow. It will grow. And responsibility is a big word at times, but in reality, it's just knowing each other, knowing children, knowing for children, knowing parents, and very often not relying on each other. I often come across saying, "Oh, my mom didn't give me homework. My mom didn't put my PE bag." My question is always, does your mom need your homework? Do you need your PE? Who is using? And I always remind children that very often parents, moms especially, they have more than one child to look after. Very often they are working. Would that be their own business or being employee? Very often, not only mums or dads look after the household, but they look after other people outside their family. So adults need every single drop or act of support from children. And when young ones come back saying, "Oh, wow, I did dishes and my mom really loved that," it explains a lot. Or they say, "I offered my mom to take the rubbish out. She was really happy." So small by small actions will lead to big deeds. The reason why I chose this topic is because I go back, I remember my mom, and through the line of my work, I come across many parents who are treated worse than slaves by their children. And that's why responsibility came to my question. That's why I have strong feelings about teaching life skills to the young ones. Because the younger they start, the easier it will be later on. Not only for them, but for parents. And as you mentioned, Marina, that me time will become easier and easier to find. And at the same time, that me time has to be scheduled. It has to be a ritual for a mom or a dad or a carer. I strongly believe that it is even easier in families where there is more than one child, because this way children can engage each other, can entertain each other, can look after each other. And when older siblings are asked to look after their young ones, and when they receive praise for their parents, there's nothing better. There's nothing. And when they are thanked for their time and effort, that is a reward. The biggest reward someone could get. And at the same time, if that moment is missed in early years, and when parents think that teenage years are good years to start, they are right in the way too, because there is never too late. However, that requires much more effort. It requires much more effort for young adults, for teenagers, to see the benefit in everything. I'm sure every single parent are able to explain, to motivate their young adults in the household. And that also transfers that to their school life, would that be college life, uni life, and their further relationships with peers within a profession. So these are my thoughts on responsibility versus contribution. And just one more thing to add. By nature, we all have the need to contribute. At greater or lesser extent, we do have need to contribute. Would that be with action, time, at times financially? We find our ways to fulfill that need. So parents, my advice to you would be use to your advantage. Is there anything else you would like to add, Marina?
Wow, this is very powerful because I'm sure the same question I had decades ago when I was a young parent, it's still in the mind of other parents. And while of course they have access to your program, to your teaching, to your lessons, I didn't, and I can't turn the time back. But here you are teaching us that experiencing responsibility is the best lesson, because if children learn very early to take responsibility of their time when there is no adult around and tell them what to do, and watch them, they will do some good. And then they will learn to take responsibility of their choices, choices of friends, choices of hobbies, choices of books, choices of food, choices of everything, and even choices to protect nature. Because if they choose to take responsibility of their pet, they will understand how priceless everything is. And of course comes to mind a thought. I'm a great fan of Bob Dylan, and he in a way was my hero for a long time. But he said that a hero is not is somebody who understands the responsibility for his freedom. So I think everything revolves around the fact that at very early stages in your life, and the sooner the better, you could become aware that when you take responsibility of your own life, of your own time, of your own choices, everything works to your advantage. And if you think of all the people who are asking you, oh, how was your childhood, before they employ you, that shows that the sooner your personality shapes and your experiences are helping you understand and make you aware of your abilities, the better. I'm so grateful you are here, Rima, because I think there are subjects which are taboo, people don't like to talk about, not because they know it all, it's just because they're afraid of the answers. And taking responsibility for great questions, I think it's something each one of us as adults got a responsibility for. Thank you so much for today.
Right.
Until next time, from both of us, is goodbye.
Goodbye.